The first thing I smelled was expensive lilies and the metallic tang of vintage Bollinger. The second thing I felt was a notification chiming in my mind. Warning, arsenic concentration 45 mg detected. Lethal dose imminent. I blinked, my vision clearing to reveal a room dripping in gold leaf and silent judgment. I wasn't in my cramped chemistry lab anymore. I was standing in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, wearing a Vera Wang gown that cost more than my tuition and holding a crystal flute of poisoned champagne. Across from me stood a woman with a smile as sharp as a scalpel. This was Serena van der Woodson's evil twin, Vanessa, the woman who had spent the last 3 years trying to dismantle Victoria Sterling, the woman whose body I currently occupied. "To your health, Victoria," Vanessa purred, her eyes tracking the bubbles in my glass with predatory hunger. "You look a little pale. Perhaps the divorce proceedings are finally catching up to you." In the original timeline of this Upper East Side drama I'd been reading before the lab explosion, Victoria Sterling dies tonight. She drinks the champagne, collapses onto the Persian rug, and Julian Vane, her tyrant husband, uses her death to consolidate the Sterling Vane fortune. But the system in my head was humming with a new neon blue interface. Skill unlocked, high-density metabolic filter, passive. You can now consume toxins as if they were vitamin gummies. I didn't scream or drop the glass. I looked Vanessa dead in the eye, tilted my head back, and drained the entire flute in one long, graceful swallow. I waited. The arsenic hit my stomach and was immediately dismantled by the system, converted into a strange, fizzy energy that made my skin glow. I let out a small, satisfied sigh and signaled a passing waiter. "A bit heavy on the metal, Vanessa. Was your chemist a discount hire? Get me a refill and make sure it's the 96. This one tasted like a chemistry set." Vanessa's face went through 3 different shades of gray. She stumbled back, her hand fluttering to her throat. You drank the whole thing." "I was thirsty," I shrugged, smoothed my dress, and turned to see the man of the hour. Julian Vane was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette imposing against the Manhattan skyline. He was the man who was supposed to be my executioner. He approached me, his eyes narrowed, his aura radiating a cold, calculated menace. "Victoria," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You're still standing. That's unexpected." "Disappointed, Julian?" I stepped into his personal space, smelling the faint scent of cedarwood and something far more dangerous. Because the night is just getting started, and I'm feeling more alive than ever. An hour later, Julian dragged me into his private study, locking the heavy mahogany door behind us. The Ice Queen Victoria would have trembled. I just sat on his desk and started peeling a grape. "Who are you?" Julian demanded. He wasn't looking at me like a husband looks at a wife. He was looking at me like a scientist looks at a miracle. "That champagne had enough arsenic to stop a horse. You should be in the morgue, not criticizing the vintage." I leaned forward, the neon interface of my system flickering in my peripheral vision. "I could ask you the same thing, Julian, or should I call you by your molar concentration? That designer cologne you're wearing isn't Tom Ford. It's a stabilized nerve agent derivative, isn't it? Used for controlled exposure? Very cutting edge of you." Julian froze. The cold, billionaire facade cracked, revealing a frantic, brilliant spark in his eyes. He let out a breath he'd been holding for centuries. "The 2024 concentration? No one here knows that. The current standard in this timeline is the 2018 variant." He slumped into his chair, rubbing his face. "I was a biohacker, a lab accident in San Francisco. I woke up in the body of Julian Vane 3 months ago. I've been trying to keep everyone away with toxins because I didn't know who to trust." "Well, Julian, meet Chloe Miller," I said, hopping off the desk. "PhD candidate in chemistry. I woke up 5 minutes ago and realized I'm immune to your entire spice rack." The tension in the room shifted instantly. We weren't enemies in a loveless marriage anymore. We were 2 nerds trapped in a den of wolves. Julian explained that the Sterling Vane board was planning a biological restructuring. A polite way of saying they were going to use Victoria and Julian as scapegoats for a failed experimental drug trial. "They think we're just spoiled elites," Julian hissed, opening a hidden compartment in his wall to reveal a high-tech lab setup that definitely didn't belong in a 19th century townhouse. "But with your immunity and my tech, we can turn the board meeting into a funeral for their careers." They're bringing the samples to the Hamptons fundraiser this weekend. They plan to leak a neurotoxin and blame our negligence. Let them, I smirked, feeling the system pulse with anticipation. I've always wanted to see how a neurotoxin tastes with hors d'oeuvres. We aren't just navigating this drama, Julian. We're going to rewrite the formula. The Vane estate in the Hamptons was a sprawling white monument to old money and hidden rot. The socialite snakes, led by Vanessa, were already there, whispering behind fans and sipping kale smoothies that looked like swamp water. But the real boss moved through the crowd like a silent tide. Julian's grandmother, the matriarch, Eleanor Vane. Eleanor was 90, but her skin was tight and her eyes were unnervingly bright. She was famous for her Vane wellness treatments, a secret regimen that supposedly kept the family elite at peak performance. "Victoria, dear," Eleanor said, her voice like grinding stones. She reached out a withered hand, her fingers stained a faint, sickly yellow. "You look vibrant. Come, have your afternoon infusion." My system went into a frenzy. Critical alert, unknown biological agent detected. Type: slow-acting organophosphate. Source: dermal contact. I realized it in an instant. The wellness treatments weren't medicine. They were low-dose poisons Eleanor had been using for 40 years to keep her children and grandchildren physically dependent on her antidotes. She wasn't just a CEO. She was a drug lord in pearls. Julian's dementia-stricken father wasn't sick, he was chronically overdosed. System evolution, detoxification field unlocked. Direct contact allows for toxin extraction. I looked at Julian, who was being handed a vitamin shot by a nurse. He looked tired, his eyes glazing over. He didn't have my resistance, he was building it, but Eleanor was faster. I had to act. "Oh, Eleanor," I said, stumbling slightly. I accidentally tripped, slamming into the matriarch and sending my glass of sparkling water over her couture silk suit. I grabbed her arms, ostensibly to steady myself, but in reality, I was opening the floodgates of my system. "I'm so sorry," I cried, gripping her wrists tight. I felt a surge of heat rush up my arms. It felt like liquid fire as I pulled the toxins directly out of her system and into mine. On the HUD in my mind, a bar was filling up. Extracting 10%, 40%, 85%, the matriarch gasped, something sharp and lucid flashing in her eyes. For the first time in decades, the chemical fog in her own brain cleared. Her dementia, the result of her own accidental exposure over the years, vanished in a heartbeat. She looked around the garden, seeing the faces of the people she had poisoned with terrifying clarity. I can see," she whispered, her voice trembling. I pulled away, my heart racing from the sheer volume of poison I'd just processed. I was sweating, but I felt invincible. I looked at the socialite snakes who were waiting for me to collapse. I just smiled, wiped a drop of sweat from my brow, and asked, "Does anyone else need a treatment? I'm feeling very generous today." The merger party was the climax of the season. The board members were all there, tucked away in the soundproof glass pavilion, ready to sign the papers that would dissolve Victoria's inheritance and pin the lab leak on Julian. Vanessa stood by the ventilation controls, a smug look on her face. She thought she was the one in control. She didn't see Julian in the basement, rerouting the sensors to a global live stream. She didn't see me standing in the middle of the pavilion, right under the vents. "The Sterling Vane merger is a tragedy of errors," the lead board member announced, his hand hovering over the contract. "Due to the negligence of Victoria and Julian, the experimental serum has been compromised. We must move to protect the shareholders." Vanessa flipped the switch. A faint, greenish mist began to hiss from the vents. It was a high-grade neurotoxin designed to cause immediate respiratory distress, enough to make us look like we'd had a mishap while handling the samples. The crowd outside the glass began to panic as they saw the mist. I stood there and took a deep breath. Processing, neurotoxin level 9, converting to endorphins. Warning, you are going to feel very, very good. I didn't cough, I didn't fall. I leaned back against the glass, looking like I was at a luxury spa. I watched Vanessa's face turn from triumph to horror through the window. Julian's voice boomed over the speakers, not just in the room, but on every major news network. "Negligence?" Julian's voice was cold and clear. "The only negligence here is the board's failure to realize that my wife is a biological miracle. And while you were busy trying to gas us, You forgot that this entire room is being monitored for chemical signatures. The police are already at the gates. I walked over to the lead board member, who was clutching his chest in terror as the mist swirled around him. I picked up the pen from his trembling hand and snapped it in half. "The merger is off," I said, my voice echoing in the silent pavilion. "And so are your careers." An hour later, the sirens were fading into the distance. Vanessa and the board were in handcuffs, and the matriarch had been taken to a private hospital, clean for the first time in half a century. Julian and I sat on the helipad of the Vane building, 2 now cold espressos between us. The city lights sparkled below, no longer looking like a trap, but like a laboratory. "So," Julian said, looking at me with a smirk. "What's the plan, Dr. Miller? We own the company now. We could actually, help people." "In a minute," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. My system gave one final, satisfied ping. Final mission complete. Reward: lifetime poison immunity. Bonus: permanent Ice Queen aura. Suggestion: go get an espresso, you've earned it. "First," I said, "we find a place that serves coffee that isn't trying to kill me. Then, Julian, we show this city what happens when you try to poison the wrong chemists." Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video.